Hi there! Welcome to the Third Party Risk Association's new series, Third Party Risk Management 101. This series is informed by our Third Party Risk Management Guidebook, a comprehensive guide for establishing a TPRM program, which will be available to all TPRM professionals in the coming months. This series is meant to be used as a starting point for those that wish to establish, validate, and/or enhance their third-party risk management program. Each video will walk through one of the 6 phases of a TPRM program life cycle, which create a strong TPRM program. The 6 phases include planning and oversight, pre-contract due diligence, contract review, continuous monitoring, disengagement, and continuous improvement. But before jumping right into the life cycle, it is important we first understand the foundations of third-party risk management, including basic definitions, risk types, calculating and evaluating risk, and finally, the basics of addressing risk exposure created by your third parties. Building a TPRM program is not unlike building a house. While it is important to have quality windows to keep out the cold and the wind, the first step is always ensuring the house is built on a sturdy foundation so that it may weather the inevitable storms to come. With that in mind, today's video will answer the question, what is third-party risk management? Answering this question will provide you with the materials to begin crafting, brick by brick, an effective and efficient third-party risk management program. To start, let's break down the term third party. For our purposes, third party will be broadly defined to include all entities that can or do provide products and/or services to an organization regardless as to whether a contract is in place or monies are exchanged. Such entities can include, but not be limited to, affiliates, subsidiaries, consultants, contractors, subcontractors, vendors, service and solution providers, fourth parties, and more. Historically, organizations procured services from third parties for cost-efficient purposes. Today, the purpose of procuring third-party products and services has greatly evolved. Now, it includes, but is not limited to, outsourcing critical processes, quickly scaling services to reach global markets, focusing on more strategic priorities, reaching niche markets, and gaining additional expertise and functionality. With this evolution comes the increased risk and impact that third parties can pose to organizations. Therefore, third-party risk is the possibility of an adverse impact on an organization's data, financials, operations, reputation, or other business objectives, as a direct or indirect result of an organization's third party. It is the storm on the horizon which TPRM professionals must always monitor and be prepared for. How do you properly mitigate said third-party risk? By having in place a strong TPRM program. But what does TPRM entail? Third-party risk management is a framework that consists of policies and procedures, controls, and oversight, established to identify and address risks presented to an organization by their third parties. It is a house equipped with various controls. A control is a process and/or activity used to monitor, review, and/or address a specific risk. So these are the thermostats, rain gauges, lightning detectors, barometers, and the home inspections. Now that we have a general idea of what TPRM is, let's take a deeper dive into why it is important. Third-party risk management, while not a new concept, is continuing to increase in importance. This is mainly due to the threat landscape growing in complexity, organizations having a greater reliance on third parties to support critical services, digital transformation projects growing in momentum, increasing regulations, and environmental impacts. In addition, there has been an increase in regulatory scrutiny of organizations to ensure they are aware of the risks and impacts their third parties have on their organization. Gone are the days where a third party can simply attest that they have a compliance program in place. Instead, regulators now require organizations to evidence their third parties have effective controls and compliance programs in place. To ensure third parties are operating securely and effectively, by adequately monitoring and mitigating risks related to the data and/or processes that has been outsourced, An organization must have in place an effective TPRM program. Customers, board members, and regulators often expect that organizations have mature TPRM programs in place. But what specifically should a TPRM program review? As a result of organizations procuring third-party services, data and/or intellectual property are frequently being shared with third parties. For our purposes, organizational data will refer to any and all proprietary and restricted data a company holds, processes, and/or secures. Frequently, third parties are assessing, transferring, manipulating, and/or storing organizational data. With this comes increased risk to the organization who has ownership of said data. Although third parties have some responsibility in safeguarding the organizational data, it's the responsibility of the owning organization to ensure that a third party is safeguarding their data and their customers' data appropriately. An organization is only as strong as its weakest link, which may be their third party. The risk of doing business with a third party depends upon the nature of the relationship between an organization and the third party, as well as the controls implemented by said third party. While there is no way to completely eliminate the risk of a data breach or a verified incident, there are security measures that can be taken by the organization to ensure they understand the risk of working with a third party and take appropriate steps to mitigate the risk. Failure to appropriately measure and manage the risks that come along with an organization's relationship with its third party can cause organizations to face scrutiny from their regulators, subject them to fines and other legal repercussions, or cause major reputational or financial risk with their customers. But what type of risks are there? There are many different types of risk a third-party relationship can impose upon an organization. TPRM programs are no longer focusing on only cyber risk, as there is an increased need to expand their risk view. Now, it is necessary for TPRM programs to review an organization's financials, operations, and even environmental and social impacts. Social impacts relate to labor practices, environmental controls, and organizational governance practices. Here are just a few types of the risk a third party could present to your organization. Reputational risk. This results from a negative public view related to dissatisfied customers, interactions not consistent with institutional policies, inappropriate recommendations, security breaches resulting in the disclosure of customer information, and/or violations of law and regulations. Operational risk results from inadequate or failed internal processes, people, and/or systems. Strategic risk results from failing to align strategic goals to business objectives and/or an activity that jeopardizes an organization's strategic objectives. Transaction risk results from issues with service and/or product delivery, or a third party's failure to perform as expected by customers. An organization can also be exposed to a transaction risk through inadequate capacity, technological failure, human error, and fraud. Financial risk results from a third party's failure to meet or align with an organization's monetary requirements and expectations. Cybersecurity risk results from the probability of exposure or loss of organizational data due to a technical failure, event, or incident, to include a breach. Environmental Social Governance (ESG) risk results from environmental, social, and governance impacts of an organization based on the decisions they make and the activities they participate in on a daily basis. Compliance risk results from a violation of laws, rules, and regulations, or from non-compliance with internal policies or procedures. Other types of risk vary based on a business's use of third parties, the efficacy of third-party internal controls, and the locations in which they operate. It is critical for organizations to evaluate the controls in place for their third parties to ensure the above risks are avoided, mitigated, shared, transferred, or accepted based upon the organization's risk management framework, driven from their risk appetite. An organization's risk appetite is the risk that organization is or is not willing to accept. All organizations have a risk appetite, whether your organization formally or informally documents it. If your organization does not formally document its risk appetite, then pay close attention to the third party's risks your organization accepts or does not address, as this informally defines your company's risk appetite. Now that we've provided background on the types of risk third parties pose to organizations, let's take a closer look at how to evaluate said risk. The assessment of third-party controls is fundamental to the initial decision of whether to contract with the third-party provider and the ongoing monitoring of the relationship. You must understand the nature of the services the third party will be providing in order to understand the impact the third party will have on your organization. Understanding this also allows businesses to proactively plan for organizational impact should the third party fail to provide the products or services promised. The key to effectively leveraging the products and services of a third party in any capacity is for an organization to properly assess, measure, monitor, and follow up on the risks associated with doing business with their third party. There are two types of risk: inherent risk and residual risk. Inherent risk is a level of risk after general information is provided, but absent of evaluating any controls in place. The inherent risk of a third party takes into account the type of product or services provided, type of data that will be accessed or transferred, geographical location of the third party, and monies to be spent. But it does not take into account the controls the third party has in place to safeguard said data. Inherent risk is usually calculated before any assessments of the third party take place. It provides a worst-case scenario picture of the third party should all controls fail. Inherent risk is also used to categorize a third party and to determine what due diligence efforts should be performed, as well as assessment cycle times, given the risk the third party poses to your organization. Residual risk is the level of inherent risk remaining after implemented controls have been assessed and/or discovered risk has been treated. Residual risk provides a more accurate picture of the risk landscape of a third party, as it evaluates the controls in place for sufficiency and effectiveness. Here's a formula for risk. Risk is calculated by the level of risk, meaning the impact it could have on your organization, multiplied by the likelihood the risk will occur. The velocity at which risk could occur may also be taken into account when calculating the likelihood. Once an organization has calculated the risk of a third party, they may choose to accept, remediate, share, transfer, or avoid the associated risk discovered. Let's take a look at each of these options. When organizations accept risk, they acknowledge that the potential loss or impact from a risk is at a level that the organization is willing to accept and/or not treat immediately. Risk acceptance should be temporary until the risk can be appropriately mitigated or a secondary control can be put in place. To remediate risk, organizations work with their third party to create and implement an achievable action plan to add or enhance a control. Risk remediation can lessen the impact a risk could have on an organization. Risk sharing allows an organization to distribute the responsibility of a risk across multiple organizations and/or individuals. This is to ensure the impact of the risk isn't felt by one organization and/or individual. Risk can be shared via implementing controls across organizations to address the risk and/or contractually sharing the responsibility of risk impact should it be realized. A risk transfer often occurs in instances where the impact of risk is high, but the likelihood the risk will occur is low. Organizations can then transfer the risk to another organization, such as an insurance company, that is better suited to handle large-scale risk. Organizations can choose to avoid a risk by not taking on the risk or avoiding actions that cause the risk. From a third-party risk perspective, this usually involves disengaging with the third party and/or terminating services. Regardless of how an organization chooses to address risk, they must first have processes in place to discover and assess the risk. This is accomplished through the implementation of a strong third-party risk management program. We hope you found this introduction to third-party risk management beneficial. Our next video, to be released next month, will cover the first phase of the TPRM life cycle, planning and oversight. This will include a detailed look at TPRM policies and procedures, inventory and third parties, program oversight and governance, metrics and reporting, education and training, regulatory compliance, and budgeting. Remember to subscribe to the TPRA YouTube channel to be notified of new videos and continue this journey of establishing and/or enhancing your TPRM program. If you enjoyed this video, let us know by dropping a like and commenting your thoughts below. Follow our socials to stay up to date on TPRA happenings. Join TPRA as a practitioner member to gain access to even more awesome resources for program enhancement, including monthly and quarterly meetings, information sharing templates and white papers, practitioner Slack forum for real-time discussions, TPRM-specific conferences, and so much more. Standard practitioner membership is free, so what are you waiting for?